Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa. Fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We are into Week 6 of the NFL season, which kicked off last night with a game between the Chiefs and the Broncos. And you know what, Dennis? The only good thing about last night's game is it ensures that I don't have to have the Broncos ruin my Sunday.
You know, that's not nothing, right?
It's not nothing.
You'll be able to watch a little football in peace. Do a little research for Tuesday's show. Maybe take the wife out for a nice brunch.
Yeah, actually, I took her to a nice lunch today, so I'm sure I'll be making some stuff. I was so despondent during the second quarter. I decided to bake pumpkin bread last night. Just make some pumpkin bread and bake that, because I'm like, I got to do something else. I can't just stare at this. I got to stare at it while I'm doing something that is soothing. We'll just dive right in. The Chiefs getting the 19-8 victory. Their 16th, is it the 16th straight, 17th straight? I think it's the 16th straight win against Denver. Last time Denver beat the Chiefs was in September of 2015, when Peyton Manning still played football and didn't just entertain you on Monday Night Football commentary telecasts. And Dennis, I'll take the Broncos side. There have been rumors for about a couple of weeks that we are about to blow it up. I'm fairly confident they're going to blow it up. I would look for something of a fire sale if anyone's willing to buy their assets. I don't know if anyone watched Steve Smith last night. They're probably not super pumped about Jerry Jeudy. I know I'm not pumped when I have to see him play.
So let me ask you this. I was not able to get to where I could hear what Steve Smith said. What exactly did he say?
Steve Smith said that he was that in the past he had offered a criticism of Jerry Jeudy's effort level. He went to go say hey to him before the Thursday night game, and Jerry Jeudy essentially told him to F off. And so Steve Smith rightly pointed out that he's kind of a jag, and that if anyone called him and asked if they should be trading for Jerry Jeudy, he'd tell them hell no.
Okay.
And I don't think he's wrong about any of those things, because Jerry Jeudy, for all of his bluster, I mean, he's been picking fights. He picked social media fight with Rod Smith, who is
Broncos
Denver royalty here, a guy who actually won Super Bowls, who went from being undrafted to one of the best receivers to ever play. He picked a Twitter fight with Philip Lindsay, who's still pretty beloved here, who had just made – Philip Lindsay works for local radio here, and when he was watching the games, made a comment about how the Broncos receivers needed to show up. And Jerry Jeudy responded, "It must be easy to watch that, or to pick those things out while you're sitting there chilling on your couch."
Yeah, I do remember seeing that.
So, this is his fourth season. A few games at the end of last year, I thought he picked up, and we finally saw what we thought we were getting when we drafted. But could have taken Justin Jefferson, could have taken CeeDee Lamb. Fortunately, didn't take Jalen Reagor. But, I mean, he doesn't impress me. Sutton had an amazing catch, but he frustrates me sometimes too, because he'll have that – I don't know if you saw the game, but that amazing touchdown catch. but then some routine things that are going right to him, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, step up. And they didn't. I don't even think they targeted Marvin Mims last night. We were running the ball for 6 yards a clip, so we of course stopped running the ball. This Denver product might be worse than last year's Denver product, which is really saying something.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it because it feels almost like Sean Payton knows that this team is good enough to be a winner, but not good enough to win it. And so he's like kind of sabotaging it a little bit so that they don't win, so that they can get rid of someone, so he can bring in more
Saints
former
players.
Saints,
Yeah. God help
more
us.
of his guys. Excuse me, or bring in, even some rookies of his own. So, and I get that but the team isn't without talent, and maybe trying to get more out of Judy would have been a little bit better. Sutton, I get he can be inconsistent.
Well, despite that, he's still the only one that I actually feel comfortable playing in fantasy. Russ had been not too bad as a fantasy play, regardless of how you feel about him, until last night gave me a little bit of pause. But the backfield is truly a three-headed, Lord knows what they're doing kind of split.
So I have 20 plus teams. So I started Russ. I started Sutton. I started Javonte. I started Jaleel. Did not start Hassan-Feff Incorporated.
Javonte is the one that bums me out the most because, you saw if they actually gave him carries, he looked good. I don't know. I just don't know what they're doing. But the Chiefs, they had a rocky first game, losing to the Lions there on opening night. They've quietly put out 5 straight. Now 5-1. They're kind of distancing themselves in the AFC. Are you starting to feel like once again they are the AFC's best team?
Yeah, Mahomes 75% completion rate, only 1 touchdown, 306 yards. Pacheco, I think there was plenty of call that it was going to be a Pacheco game because they would be able to get up and then try to grind the game out a little bit. He had 16 carries. He wasn't super efficient with them. Catching 6 passes certainly helped his fantasy night. Kelce did what he does, 9 for 124, and you'll take that every day. I actually just traded for Kelce about 30 minutes ago. 1 QB league, no tight end premium. You tell me what you think of this. I'm in 5th place, and the team in 6th place has Waller and I think even another startable tight end, but their QB situation is Russ or Josh Dobbs. I have Tua and Trevor Lawrence. I ended up selling Lawrence and my expected late first round pick for Kelce, and Josh Dobbs is my QB insurance for Tua. Good deal.
Redraft?
PPR. I think I overpaid a little bit, but I don't think it was terrible.
Well, it must be Dynasty if you're trading draft picks.
Yeah.
Dobbs isn't much insurance.
I think he'll play most of this year.
Who knows with Arizona?
Yeah. My thought is that at least that gives me some hedge, and I'll go out and, if it need be, I had somebody, my running backs are Achane and Ramondre, and then some other pieces that I'm going to have to fill in for a few weeks. My goal is I just want to get to the playoffs, let my team get healthy. They've got Olave and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Evan Ingram, Romeo Dobbs. I've got some pieces, and then Tua, so I'm making a run at it.
Well, let's dive into the rest of the Week 6 schedule. 2 teams on a bye, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers. So we have 14 more games to go this week, 13 of which are on Sunday. First up, we have the third and final London game, the 3-2 Baltimore Ravens at the 2-3 Tennessee Titans. Dennis, is there a Baltimore Ravens receiver you trust?
I think at this point, the receiver you're going to trust is Zay Flowers. He's sitting at wide receiver 31. So I definitely think that if you're looking for depth, he's got a guy you want to get. I think he's going to continue to rise up. OBJ's in and out of the lineup. Bateman's not doing it. Aguilar isn't doing it. Duvernay isn't doing it. Prochet isn't doing it. It's Mark Andrews and it's Zay Flowers. He's getting 30% of the air yards, leads the team in targets and targets per route run, has 39 targets. 38% or 31.8% of his targets are first read targets, which is a team high. So Lamar trusts him. Lamar's going to him. And with Jackson on pace for career highs in passing, it's just a matter of time before Flowers takes that next step.
For the Tennessee Titans, they have not been very good, but more troubling probably for fantasy players. They have not really made very good use of Derrick Henry. He was once a pretty easy set it, forget it RB1, but are you starting to think about whether you put him in your lineup this year?
You know, I mean, it feels like he's a game script dependent, touchdown dependent back. And when it's right, man, it's right, and he's racking up the points. But the team is terrible. Tannehill's not getting it done. Hopkins had a high-volume game last week. Burks is injured again. Okonkwo seemed to have disappeared into the nether. You know, he's RB15. He's a clock eater, though. If the team gets ahead or if they're trying to hold a lead or they're close and trying to shorten the game, that's what Henry does. You know, the Ravens give up the 8th fewest rush yards in the NFL. And so I don't think it bodes well this week for Henry. I feel like he's a low-end flex, mid-flex. Spears is nipping at his heels for playing time. He's at RB30. He's the guy providing the explosiveness and the receiving out of the backfield. Henry's receiving numbers seem to get skewed each year because he'll have a couple games where he'll catch a dump off and take it 70 for a touchdown. So that skews his receiving numbers. If I'm going to get Henry for a stretch run as a contender, I don't think I'm paying a first round pick for him anymore. I think his lifespan, we're seeing the sunset on his fantasy lifespan. I wouldn't want him to be any higher than my RB3 on my fantasy team.
I am taking the Ravens.
So am I.
Next up, the 2-3 Washington Commanders at the 3-2 Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, Logan Thomas comes into the week as tight end 11, and that is despite having missed a full game. He's averaging more than 11 points per game when he plays. Are you liking Thomas as a tight end option?
As you say that, Thomas is the other tight end that Bro Namath has that just traded me Kelsey. So I do like Thomas. He's tight end 6 in points per game. So he's being very, very productive. He has missed a game due to injury. I think he's 31 or 32 years old, former quarterback that remade himself. The Falcons give up the 4th most points to tight ends. So this looks like it's setting up to be another good Logan Thomas game.
We'll stick with tight ends and switch teams. Kyle Pitts is the one that we're always waiting to break out, but Jonnu Smith wasn't involved in the game at all in week 1, but in the 4 weeks since has had at least 6 targets in each game, has 21 receptions for 246 yards, has had a really steady floor for PPR, even if he doesn't have much of a ceiling. How are you feeling about Jonnu?
This kind of reminds me a little bit of the old 2 tight end Philadelphia Eagles. And Smith is viable, but he's definitely moving in the other direction. Pitts has been ascending the last couple games, and Smith is still viable. Smith has a low ceiling. Pitts has his best game, and Smith still went 6 of 7 targets for 77 yards. So that's what, a 13.7 in a PPR. But Pitts is outsnapping him now after 5 games, 63% to 65%. But Janu right now is the perfect trade away tight end. People are still down on Pitts. If you can get a late second round pick for Janu Smith right now in Dynasty, I think that's great. If you in redraft, if you can include him in a package to upgrade another position, I think that's right where you want to be with Janu Smith. Most of the underlying metrics favor Pitts.
I am taking the Falcons.
I'm going Commanders.
We shall see. Next up, intriguing game: the 1-4 Minnesota Vikings at the 1-4 Chicago Bears. Oops, I picked the wrong. Justin Jefferson went on IR. We know we're not going to have him. Jordan Addison is off the injury report. Which wide receiver do you think steps up between him and Osborne this week with Jefferson out?
So I think they're both going to get plenty of opportunity. I think that Hockenson is going to be benefit, but I think Osborne gets the biggest boost. He's going to be the reliable guy. It's not great, but those targets have to go somewhere. I think they still take shots with Addison deep, and Hockenson and Osborne in the short and intermediate area. That they're the ones I think that benefit the most.
For the Bears, DJ Moore to Justin Fields has been the hot connection, but the backfield, that is going to be something of a curiosity. Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson, and Travis Homer all ruled out. What are you doing with the Bears backfield?
I'm firing up zombie Deontay Foreman. I mean,
from a healthy scratch to Deonta, we always loved you.
Yeah. My guy, how you doing? And he's going to be backed up by Darrington Evans too. So
I know who didn't they at one point released him?
Yeah, they just signed him again this week. So, I think Foreman's going to be fine. Whoever, I wrote these before we knew they were out. And I said, whoever is in that role is going to be a low end flex. And that was between Foreman and Roschon. It's the downside is it's a weak passing offense in the Bears versus a weak running defense in the Vikings. So it's going to have to be the running game. And Foreman's going to be the guy. You remember years ago, Cameron Artis-Payne was backing up. Was it James Stewart, maybe?
Yeah.
Somebody in Carolina, D'Angelo Williams or somebody.
Probably both of them.
He would be inactive on game day if the starter was healthy. But if he wasn't, if the starter was out, they activated Payne and he would get 20 carries. He didn't do anything else. That's all he was. He was the understudy. Like literally, that's what he was. And it looks like that's what Foreman is right now. He's the understudy. If everybody else is active, they have other contributions that they make. So they'll deactivate Foreman. Well, nobody else is there. Foreman's going to come in. Somebody else is going to play special teams that the other running backs do. And he's just going to he'll get 16 carries and 5 targets.
I am taking the Bears in this one, and I think that we're getting close to the end of the Kirk Cousins Minnesota era.
It looks like it. The Bears for me as well.
Next up, we have the 3-1 Seattle Seahawks, fresh off their bye, at the 2-3 Cincinnati Bengals. Dennis, the Seahawks have an embarrassment of riches at receiver with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and a guy who's been really quiet, which is Jackson Smith and Jigba. How are you approaching these receivers for fantasy?
So DK's sitting at wide receiver 37, wide receiver 23 in points per game. Lockett's wide receiver 48, 41 in points per game. Let me see what Lockett hasn't been as lucky as DK. DK's produced okay. I'd like to see them maybe bump up JSN's ADOT. He's got a 2.8 yard ADOT. They're literally throwing him the ball at the line of scrimmage, and that's it. I think he's wide receiver 101. I didn't even write it down. It was so low. But I like DK. I think he's still going to do what he does. He's a big target, and Geno will go to him. Lockett is he's surprisingly underperforming. I think he's still got a lot in the tank. But if Lockett's only giving you wide receiver 48 numbers, I think you've got to do something with JSN. And what you got to do with him isn't 2.8 yards per target. You've
He's
got
on the Jerry Jeudy development plan right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On the flip side, Joe Burrow finally looked like Joe Burrow last week, exploded with Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is officially questionable, but there is a chance he could play. This should be an important matchup here with the Seahawks as the Bengals look to go into a bye. Are you back to feeling good about Joe Burrow if he was the guy you bet on in a one quarterback league?
So I'm not panicky. I'm still have a little bit of trepidation, but I'm not panicky. Burrow looked good. He moved better. I think maybe that we're past the worst of it as long as he doesn't re-injure it. Last week's great game bumped him up from QB 31 to QB 25. I expect that that's going to continue to bounce up as he keeps going forward. I got him back in my lineup right now. I think he's on the verge of starting to push for QB1 numbers. He was a little more mobile last week. He moved around. He threw the ball with a little more power. And that was the biggest thing, was he just didn't seem like he could push off on throws because of that calf. Last week, we started to see that go away.
I am feeling better about him. I am taking the Bengals.
Bengals for me as well.
San Francisco 49ers 5-0 at the 2-2 Cleveland Browns. Dennis, how do you feel about Brock Purdy? Are you starting to feel like he might be a good starting option?
I mean, he's QB 20. He's over 20, or QB 7, over 20 points for the last 3 weeks. But the Browns give up the third fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks at 11.6. The quarterbacks they've faced are Burrow, Pickett, Tannehill, and Jackson. So there have been a couple good ones with Burrow and Jackson. So I feel like it's going to be a good game for the Browns defense, but they're just going to end up giving up some plays. And unfortunately, we got PJ Walker going at quarterback with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I mean, it was amazing how everybody went from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Maybe we should just start him instead of Deshaun Watson. He looked so good in the preseason. And then when he got in there under live fire, he just got eaten up. So, he's got some work to do.
I take it you're not excited about PJ Walker.
PJ Walker, man, he's just kind of he's a lifer. He's been around. He's the new Josh Johnson, I think. I like Purdy a lot. You've got to give it up to his consistency. He makes the right reads. He does what he needs to do quickly, gets it to the right guys. The guys make plays. He's got one of the best stable of weapons in the NFL. Probably the best defense, and maybe even the best offensive line. I mean, I think the 49ers right now are the best team. And you don't have to be the best athlete or have the strongest arm if you're making the right decisions at the position.
I am taking the 49ers. I assume that you probably are as well.
And I like to live dangerously, but I'm not that dangerous. I'm going 49ers.
I would have liked to have seen this game if the Browns had a healthy Watson and Chubb.
Yeah.
Because that would have been an interesting, but Jerome Ford and PJ Walker, probably not that great. 0-5 Carolina Panthers at the 4-1 Miami Dolphins. Dennis, Adam Thielen having a monster season. You're definitely playing him. But aside from Thielen, is there any Panther you're excited about for fantasy?
Andy Dalton, but they won't play him.
I was going to say, I don't remember seeing that Young was out. Sanders is also out, but Chuba Hubbard, I don't know.
So Chuba's sitting at RB 39 and Sanders is RB 28. I feel like Hubbard's been the better back this year, though. He just hasn't gotten the opportunity that Sanders has. I don't know how good an opportunity it is to say, here, guy, you get the Dolphins. Let's see what you can do. But nobody has really stepped up. Like, I'm starting Chuba in a couple places, but it's as a flex, or it's a team that I'm tanking and I just don't have anybody else at running back, and I'm okay with getting 6 points or 5 points. But Hubbard was, he's a fast back. He's got good size, runs a little bit upright, can catch the ball. So it wouldn't surprise me a bit if Hubbard put up 75 yards and a touchdown and 4 catches. I just don't know that Bryce Young is a guy that can get him there.
For the Dolphins, Devin Achand now on IR, which is a bummer. Jeff Wilson was downgraded to doubtful. So is it Raheem Mostert to the moon?
I think so. Isn't Ahmed is back, isn't he? So it'll be Mostert and Ahmed and Chris Brooks. But I would expect in that scenario, I'd expect Mostert to get 80% of the touches, which oddly enough will likely lead to Mostert getting hurt and Wilson being back next week and being the starter and getting 80% of the touches.
And then getting hurt, and then Miami going, oh, shoot, we should have gotten more durable running backs.
No, honestly, they have 5 running backs that are basically all the same guy, or maybe 4 now because Gaskin is gone. 4 guys.
Gaskin went to Minnesota and I thought, oh, man, maybe he'll get a shot. No, I like Mostert. I think in this game, Carolina's defense will be susceptible to that scheme. Mostert will have a big game this week. It wouldn't surprise me to see Ahmed or Chris Brooks put up flex-worthy numbers, at least one of them as well, especially if the passing game clicks and they get up quick by 3 touchdowns. Then they're going to run the ball. The downside of it is when Miami runs the ball to eat up the clock, they keep breaking off 70-yard runs for touchdowns, and next thing you know, it's 70-20. My bad. I am taking the Dolphins.
So am I.
Next up, a battle for the AFC South, the 3-2 Indianapolis Colts at the 3-2 Jacksonville Jaguars. We know Anthony Richardson is out and Gardner Minshew is in, but what are you expecting from the backfield tandem of Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor?
I expect this week to see the opportunities flipped. I think Taylor's going to get the biggest part of the workload. Unfortunately, Zach Moss is just a dollar store version of Jonathan Taylor. He's a big guy. He's a runner, okay pass receiver, and it's going to end up, either by the end of this week or next week at the latest. I think Taylor will take back his bell cow role. I like the Zach Moss story, and I get it if they want to keep him just for insurance, but I also get it if they want to try and trade him before the trade deadline and get some value for him because, maybe they're okay with Trey Sermon and Evan Hull, who is Hull out for the season or is he on?
He's on IR.
Yeah, but is he out for the season or short term?
I don't remember what his injury was.
I expect Taylor to either this week or next week at the latest to take his bell cow roll back.
Down in Jacksonville, prior to the season, we thought there might be a little bit more of a split with them adding Tank Bigsby, but Travis Etienne has been pretty well dominating the backfield work. How are you feeling about him?
Man, they're putting him in a position where he doesn't have to look hard for the holes, and he's making the most of it. They're getting him the ball in space. That's where he works the best. And he's a fantastic straight line runner with great speed. I love Tank Bigsby coming in. He was kind of my guy out of this. Once you got past the first couple backs, he was my guy for me. But he's become a non-factor, and if you've got ETN, man, you're gonna fire him up and let him run.
Yeah, I am taking the Jaguars to get the season sweep.
I am as well.
The 3-2 New Orleans Saints at the 2-3 Houston Texans. Dennis, since Alvin Kamara came back, we have not seen a lot out of Chris Olave the last 2 games. He did get a touchdown last week, which helped, but only 2 receptions. You still feel pretty good about him as a starter for you?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in Olave. I think the issue is really Derek Carr's shoulder. And the further we get away from the actual injury occurring, the stronger the shoulder gets. And, It's still when I look back at his first game after Winston played that game, to me it seemed like how could you put Derek Carr out there when he could not throw the ball? It was almost as bad as Brock Purdy last year in the playoffs, but they did, and it was miserable. But I believe in Olave. He's an exceptional receiver, great route runner, and I've got to trust now that if they're going to keep putting Carr out there, it's because his shoulder's getting better and they're more confident in his ability to get the ball out there to their best receiver.
Or because Dennis Allen hates Jameis Winston. One of the two. For the Texans, CJ Stroud looking more and more like a potential rookie of the year candidate, but we've seen New Orleans defense can be stout. Tank Dell, very iffy, still in concussion protocol, may not be able to play. Are you still pretty confident firing up CJ Stroud?
I think I saw him. I think I saw that Tank Dell is out.
No, he's still listed as questionable.
I think Stroud is a streamer in 1 QB leagues. He sits at QB 14 right now. The Saints give up the 6th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. So as a streamer, you might want to hold off this week on him. But the Texans did get both starting tackles back last week. So that offensive line is starting to get healthy, which should help Dameon Pierce in the running game. The biggest issue with Stroud right now is, yes, he's not throwing interceptions, but he's not throwing a lot of touchdowns either. His yardage has been down the last couple weeks. I think the first 3 weeks he was over 300 yards all 3 weeks, and up close to or over 40 attempts. I think two of 3 weeks. So they're starting to get a little more balance in that lineup. I love what CJ Stroud is doing. He's just went in there and taking care of business.
I like what he's doing too. I'm taking the Texans.
So am I.
Next up to the afternoon games, 1-4 New England Patriots at the 2-3 Las Vegas Raiders. Interesting note, Josh McDaniels actually 2-0 against Bill Belichick, trying to go for the hat trick here. Patriots coming into this game off of back-to-back games where they gave up 30-plus and got outscored 72-3. No Juju Smith-Schuster in this one, but can the Patriots rally in some way against the Raiders?
I mean, eventually they're going to rally against somebody, but after the last couple games, they're in autopsy mode right now, trying to figure out how to get through the rest of the season. And we haven't heard much about what the changes are. The big thing is they don't have any receivers that anybody fears. Now, I know the Raiders aren't a great team. Max Crosby, he's a beast. They've got a couple players that are, playing above their heads. But I think right now the Patriots are just in a position that they can't quite put it all together, which is weird to me because I felt like O'Brien would be able to get the offense on track. And I think even we're seeing that having a shitty group of wide receivers, even a good coach can struggle with. On another fun note, Belichick is only 18-19 versus former assistants or players that have been head coaches. So I think it's some of that mystique might be leaving.
Yeah. Typically, the Patriots try to take away something that you do really well. The Raiders, they have two pretty marquee stars in Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Which one do you think will be more of the defensive focus?
So oddly enough, I feel like the Raiders have enough high-level weapons in Adams and Myers and Jacobs that stopping just one of them isn't going to be enough. Like if they shut down the passing game, I think that opens them up to Josh Jacobs having, 150 plus yards. And if they shut down the running game, I think Adams and Jacoby Myers will run wild in the passing game. If I'm a shut down just one of them guy, I don't know. I'm going to try to shut down the running game because the passing game is just inherently less productive, less efficient. That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, and with the injuries in the Patriots secondary, I think they'd have an easier time trying to focus on shutting down the running lanes too. They had to make that trade to get J.C. Jackson back. I am taking the Patriots.
I'm going with the Raiders.
Next up, the 1-4 Arizona Cardinals at the 2-3 Los Angeles Rams. Dennis James Conner is on IR. Emari Demercado stepped in for him last week and looks to be in line to get a bulk of the carries this week. How are you feeling about him?
So Demercado is interesting. Like, he's kind of like a low rent version of Dameon Pierce, in the sense that Pierce did not get a ton of opportunity at Florida. You know, it seems like he had all the makings to be a real good college back, but he just never got the carries. Well, Demercado, he's 5'9", 215. He backed up Kendre Miller at TCU, and so he also in college didn't get a great opportunity. Athletically, Demercado compares very favorably to Aaron Jones, about the same size, good lateral movement, good speed. He didn't catch as many passes in college as Jones did. He only had 40 receptions. And we've seen with James Conner that he's a 3-down back. I like Demercado, but I've heard some whispers that they're listing Keontae Ingram as the starter. I know Keontae still has that questionable mark. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I think it doesn't really matter who they start. They're probably Ingram and Demercado will probably split the load pretty evenly. And so that makes both of them flex plays.
For the Rams, Kyron Williams started the season really hot, but the last couple of games has taken a little bit of a back seat. How are you feeling about him in fantasy?
So I've been stating all along that I don't think he can hold up to 20-plus touches per game. Now, I don't know if just the wear and tear of the first few weeks has what led to his reduced production in the last game or two, but getting Cooper Kupp back helps take the pressure off the run game. And so you got Kupp and Nacua opening up the space there at the line of scrimmage. You got Tutu Atwell getting down the field. I think it's possible that, he gets 16 plus carries and 3 or 4 targets and has a pretty productive game.
I am taking the Rams.
So am I.
Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles 5-0 at the 2-3 New York Jets. Dennis, DeAndre Swift having a good run for the Eagles, but it's a pretty stout defensive front for the New York Jets. Do you still like him in this week's matchup?
I like him from the standpoint of he's going to have to boost that passing game because those New York Jets cornerbacks are outstanding.
I don't know if you saw the injury report.
No,
those New York Jets cornerbacks are not available. DJ Reed out, Brandon Eccles out, Justin Hardy out, Sauce Gardner considered extremely questionable game time decision.
Oh, well, hey. Guess I should.
Not great to be a Jet right now.
Well, looks like we're gonna have Zach Wilson playing from behind.
Now, what else is new?
I like Swift. And he's fit into the offense well. I think he can be productive. And if they're down their top 4 cornerbacks, I think that Jalen Hurts will be able to make some hay with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. And that will open up some opportunities for Swift. I think Swift is probably a low-end RB2 this week.
For the Jets, we're starting Breece Hall, who has looked amazing, and you're starting Garrett Wilson just because all he needs is that one breakaway play. But any other Jet that you are even thinking about?
Probably Tyler Conklin would be the closest. He's a dart throw tight end. The Eagles give up the 8th most points to tight ends. So there's some opportunity there. Conklin's had 3 tight end 2 games. In 5 starts this year. So if if anybody else on that team can, it's certainly not going to be Dalvin Cook. I think we've seen that. But I think if anybody can be fantasy relevant this week, it's going to be Tyler Conklin.
The Jets have never beaten the Philadelphia Eagles, and you know what? They won't this week. I'm taking the Eagles.
I don't think they're beating them either, so Eagles for me as well.
Next up, an interesting late afternoon game. The 4-1 Detroit Lions at the 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a battle of two division leaders. Dennis, looks like no Jahmyr Gibbs again this week. Jameson Williams returned last week. Didn't have a big game, a couple receptions for a couple of yards. Do you think we'll see an uptick as he goes into week 2?
Yeah, I think they'll give him opportunities as they arise. You know, Goff wants to get the ball out. He doesn't want to get hit. So he doesn't hold on to it a lot. They've got a great run game with Montgomery. So they're not really worried about whether or not Gibbs plays. Yeah, they're okay with David Montgomery getting 3.8 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns and 125 yards. They'll take that. Monty hasn't had much in the passing game this year, but we know from his history in Chicago, he's an excellent pass receiver and pass blocker. So with Gibbs out, we might see more 3-down work for David Montgomery. Sam Laporta is a beast. And I think is Amon-Ra, he's still questionable, or has he been ruled out?
Laporta's questionable too, but let's see. Amon-Ra's not even on the injury report, so he must be in good shape.
So I think that bodes well for that Detroit Lions offense.
Yeah, the only bummer is Jahmyr Gibbs. But
you can't miss what you never had, right?
Oh, you can miss it. I miss it. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their pass offense has been pretty good. Their run offense, we haven't seen a lot. How are you feeling about Rachaad White these days?
So White's checking in this week at RB25 on the season. Now he's dominating snaps. He's been playing 77% of the snaps. But we talked a lot about last year, a lot of folks wanted to hop on, he caught 50 passes. But that was from check down king Tom Brady, who also gave Leonard Fournette 70 passes. White has 0 explosive runs, playing 77% of the snaps. I think even the lowest of expectations would not have guessed that he would only have 0 explosive runs. He's got the 4th highest stuff rate of backs with 60 carries. He's the 6th lowest yards before contact. So, that kind of goes, those two metrics go hand in hand. Basically, he's got people in the backfield with him when he tries to take the handoff. People are hitting him in the backfield. And, that's a rough way to go as a running back that isn't a superior talent. And White, he's a good back. He's not a great back. He's, probably a little – his ceiling is probably an average back. So they're going to have to do something, which is going to be Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I just don't know if they'll be able to do enough of it to put away the Lions.
Not for me. I'm taking the Lions.
So am I.
On to the Sunday night game, the 1-4 New York Giants at the 3-2 Buffalo Bills. Dennis, this is probably not the homecoming Brian Dable had hoped for. Let me read you the MASH lineup for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones is out with a neck injury. Center John Michael Schmitz is out with a shoulder injury. Tackle Matt Pert is out with a shoulder injury. Tackle Andrew Thomas is out with a hamstring injury. Tackle Evan Neal is highly questionable with an ankle injury. Tight end Darren Waller is questionable with a groin injury, and Saquon Barkley is questionable with an ankle injury. Tyrod Taylor rolling out there, not much of a line in front of him. Not many people that get you excited that are healthy lining up beside him. What kind of a chance do you give the Giants?
So Tyrod Taylor's probably on his burner phone to the Chargers doctor right now, trying to get himself a shot to the lung so he doesn't have to play this weekend. I don't give the Giants any real shot. You remember the term FUBAR? they're effed up beyond all recognition right now. That team is falling apart. With Jones out, Waller and Barkley questionable, it's going to be a long night in Buffalo.
It's more concerning to me that they're missing all those. If Neal ends up not being able to go, you're missing your top 3 tackles on a line that, I'm going to be honest, wasn't spectacular to begin with.
I mean,
your center.
The argument could be made that Neal might not be one of the top 3 tackles on that team. It's just draft capital getting him out there starting. He has sunk the joint up.
Yeah. Well, clearly having an ankle injury is not going to improve that, because Buffalo has some decent pieces on their front end. Dennis, things did not go the way the Bills had hoped in London. Do you think they might be back out ready to roll on Sunday night?
I think they're going to steamroll the Giants. I think it's going to be a go to bed at halftime kind of game. This might be a sneaky spot to start Damian Harris or Latavius Murray.
I know. I don't. If you could feel confident that one or the other had the advantage, then you could do it. But I was thinking until last week, it's Latavius Murray, and then you saw Damian Harris out there in some crucial situations. Like, I don't know what to make of this. I am still taking the Bills.
So am I.
Monday Night Football, actually a real good one. The Dallas Cowboys 3-2 at the 2-2 Los Angeles Chargers, who have Dallas's old offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. Dennis, the Dallas offense was nothing but a rumor in Week 5. Do you think they can bounce back in Week 6?
So I think they can. The Chargers give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers in the league. So we just have to keep Dak from throwing the ball to the tight end.
So you're telling me it's the Jake Ferguson game?
Yeah. It's probably going to be a Jalen Tolbert game is what it'll end up being.
Come on. Yeah, because I think Kavontae Turpin, I was going to look. Oh, he's off the injury report. You never know. Might be him, because he was the only one that did it last week.
And the Chargers also give up the 9th most receptions to running backs. So Tony Pollard has an opportunity to offset his lack of rushing production in this game with receptions. I think it's going to be this feels like it's going to be a 50-plus attempt game for Dak. So you're probably going to get at least 2 interceptions. But I could see him getting 4 touchdowns just because the defense gives up that production to running backs and wide receivers. They are fairly tough against tight ends, but that could actually be because they're so weak against running backs and wide receivers. Why bother throwing it to the tight end?
Dennis, in a spot of beautiful fantasy news, Austin Eckler is off the injury report and expected to play on Monday night. What are you expecting to see from him?
Man, if Eckler's back and they're telling us that he's got no restrictions, I'm looking for 12 targets with 9 catches, 2 touchdowns. I think he's going to come back and do Austin Eckler things, especially with Mike Williams out. That's going to take pressure off of Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson to have to step up, or Donald Parham and Gerald Everett to have to step up. It's going to be a Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler night.
I am taking the Chargers despite what you call my Cowboys fandom.
I'm going Chargers as well.
I just think coming off a bye at home, Kellen Moore is going to be a wee bit motivated.
Yeah.
Well, that'll wrap up the Week 6 lineup. We'll be back on Tuesday to talk about this and the Thursday night football game in Week 7, which is the Saints at the Jaguars. But Dennis, how can people fill that long, lonely Friday night without us?
Well, if you're in Central Ohio for tomorrow and you don't have the Peacock app, you won't be able to watch the Buckeyes. So you might as well go to YouTube and search us out, or download us on your favorite podcast app. Give us a listen, a rating, and a review. We look forward to it.
Well, we will appreciate that, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the Week 6. I'm just relieved I won't be watching a Broncos loss this weekend, so I'm going to enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, take those small wins where you get them.
Yes, you do, because that might be the only win we get.